paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted. And, here a while back, about 2 months ago, I guess, 3 months ago, something like that, I went down to St. Augustine, Florida. I wanted to see the Haunted Lighthouse. I got to see it. I even got I do that every time. Got the shirt from the Haunted Lighthouse. So, yeah, Race, I got more shirts. I know what you're saying. So, anyway, I like souvenir shirts. What can I say? Did go buy a book or see it, and it's called Haunted Lighthouses of Florida, I believe. And the author is Dr. Heather Leigh Landon. Turns out she's wrote a whole bunch of books. Ghosts and Legends of the Vegas Valley, Haunted Florida Lighthouses, got a few more coming out. Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns, how she gets information on ghost towns. Awesome. That's great. And I wanted to bring her on here just to talk about Haunted Florida. I've had one guest from Florida in the last almost 3 years now. Well, let's bring up Dr. Landon and see what she's got to talk about. Hi, Heather.
Hello, how are you doing?
Well, not bad. How's the weather down there?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
I left here, it was January in North Carolina, so it was cold and nasty. And a few hours, maybe 6-8 hours drive, and there I am on the beach. It was rainy, but it was warm.
Right.
Gotta love Florida.
Oh, I know. We've been sunny and in the 90s, so it's been gorgeous.
How'd you go Vegas and Florida? Do you travel between the two?
No. What's interesting is, I want to say about 2015, we lived in Florida, and my husband got transferred out to Vegas. So we figured, what the heck? It's a new adventure. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And we packed up, lived there about 7-8ish years.
Okay.
And while I was out there, I have always been interested in the paranormal, and I've been doing this since I was 17. But while I was out there, I got connected with the team and just kind of dove headfirst into it. And that's where all of the Vegas information for the books that I got from was. And then 3 years ago now, we decided to move back to Florida to be back closer to family.
Mm-hmm. So now you've got a team made up of family members.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How's that working out?
It works out great. It's right now it's just my husband and my son. And then a friend of mine might be joining in, as well as I have some other relatives who are thinking on joining us, but we just quite haven't made the decision to expand. Right. But I'm the wholehearted believer. I believe that spirits are out there, just don't know why or what's causing them to be there. So that's my goal, is to find out the science behind it. My husband is the skeptic. He has had experiences, but still doesn't believe that they're paranormal related. So he's still kind of on that, he knows he's had experiences, but he's not quite sure. So he's the skeptic of our group. Mm-hmm. And then my son, he's now 20, but he's been doing this since he was 15. He comes up with our crazy theories. And it is, he's really good. And then when it comes to actually kind of, going into a location and being curious, he's our curious one that wants to know where things are.
Okay. Well, you've got a book out on Vegas ghost towns. You're producing one now on Florida ghost towns, mm-hmm. which had never occurred to me there'd be a Florida ghost town. I see that as always in the Old West.
Right. And what I discovered is Florida has over 400 ghost towns, and we're second in the nation for ghost towns, next to Nevada.
400, and yet so many people moving in there. How is that even possible? You've got, in the last year, you've had thousands move in.
Right. We have, if you look in like the Everglades area, or, Central Florida has a lot of these small towns, or when you're, when you're driving through Florida, you notice that you have these long roadways where you have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And those are essentially where you would find these ghost towns. And they're all just kind of, most of them are huddled together. And there's 3 ghost towns that actually are no longer in existence because I think it was Boca Raton built right on top of it.
Wow. So Boca Raton's sitting on old homes and city halls and whatever else they had there.
Yeah. Old cemeteries and all of that stuff. So that's smack dab right on top of it. And then, but I also classify ghost towns, even for the Nevada book I wrote, in 3 categories. You have your true ghost town that everybody thinks of, that is completely abandoned. Nobody lives there anymore. And it's just fallen to ruin. And that's kind of what you would expect to see out in the western area of the United States. And even though Florida does have some of those, especially like the old Civil War forts, the Seminole War forts, and all of those are kind of fallen to disrepair. And that kind of classifies as the ghost town. But then you have what I call a working ghost town. Anywhere from 200 to 1,000 residents are still working to keep the ghost town alive, whether they offer tours or just continue with whatever the industry was. Okay. And then I have, it's really not ghost town-ish, but it's a classification. An example would be like Boulder City. It was really booming, had thousands of residents, and now it doesn't, now that the Hoover Dam's been built. So it would be similar if Disney packed up and left Florida, what Orlando would turn into. It would still have a couple thousand residents, but it wouldn't be what it was.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. All right. And I'm trying to place the idea of these forts, even the Spanish forts, going into disrepair. It seemed like every place down there had an old Spanish fort or an old fort of some sort that was a tourist attraction. They're letting some of these fall apart.
There's several. If you go over on the West Coast, which is where we're at right now, you have Fort Jefferson, which is actually being taken care of by the state park system now. But that is just the old fort. You can go to tours and a whole bunch of other. You can even camp, do the dry camping on the beaches because it's on an island. But then just north of there, it's I want to say it's Fort Dade, and that one is half underwater. Because it's on an island and erosion is just, and you can go in there and you can still go and explore it because it's on state property and you can go do tours, but they're not taking care of it at all.
Okay. Is that a danger area for poisonous snakes, gators, things like that?
Yeah, you always have to keep an eye out.
And what is a dry camping on the beach?
I guess I could be wrong. I'm not a camper, so I don't know. But it's where you don't go and have any water or any sewage hookup. You just set your tent up, and that's all you have.
You bring in and take out what you got.
Right. No amenities, no nothing whatsoever. And they do allow that on the beaches on a first come, first serve basis, which I know people who've done it just to see if they can experience the ghosts overnight because you can still have free roam of the whole property. But I'm not a camper, and I just refuse to do it.
Okay, let's go to a lighthouse because I'm ex-Coast Guard. So lighthouses was part of our history, part of our neat stuff. I went down to see St. Augustine, and I think it was in January, if I remember correctly. And it was the Dark of the Moon tour. It started about 9 or 10 o'clock that night. I was standing, my wife and I were standing in the souvenir shop. Picked up a nice shirt, picked up a book here and there. We're talking, and there was quite a few people in there milling around, but nobody near us. But we got back in a corner to keep out of people's way. And there was a display of, I don't even remember what it was, some kind of souvenirs. And suddenly they got just knocked. I mean, these things went flying everywhere, nobody near it. It wasn't like vibrations dropped them because they went flying. Have you heard stories like that from that lighthouse before?
I have. That lighthouse and the Jupiter lighthouse just south of there have the same occurrences in the gift shop where someone will be, 5-10 feet away from something and it'll just go flying across the room. And at the St. Augustine lighthouse, a lot of the investigators who've researched there that I've talked to, they feel it's the Petrie girls having fun. Okay.
I've heard of that. I heard of the legends.
Yeah.
That was the one that ghost hunters actually got the video of the shadow looking down at them, right?
Yep. Yes.
And is that also the Petrie girls, or is that one of the other spirits?
They think that is because a lot of people, when they're climbing the stairs, have turned around and seen a shadow figure behind them, or have felt someone touch them on the shoulders. And a lot of people have seen that apparition, and they believe it's one of two things. It is either the wife of a former lighthouse keeper, and they're not sure which one, or it was someone who was on the property before the lighthouse was built. That's kind of like stuck behind.
But it's still a intelligent haunting that is aware of the lighthouse and actually climbs the steps.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever come across that before, but that's pretty cool. Lighthouse keepers, any of them that are believed to be there?
There are at that one, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but there is a lighthouse keeper who's believed to roam the property by the main house. Mm-hmm. And then also an assistant light keeper there, I believe, had committed suicide in his room. And he is known to haunt the room that he was in, because the main house had the lighthouse keeper on one side, and then his assistants would rotate on the other side when they were there. And it was one of the assistants that ended up killing himself with a shotgun. And
that'll do it.
And he's known to roam that particular building and then the grounds around it as well.
Okay. You mentioned Juniper. Am I pronouncing
Jupiter.
that right? Jupiter.
Jupiter. Yeah.
Okay. I've never even heard of it. Didn't know it was nearby. And I even went down to travel A1A just to say I'd been on it.
Yeah. So, I guess nearby would be about an hour's drive.
Okay. And what's the story on that one?
That one has, all your typical, lighthouses, but that one also has tales of Seminole War attacks. So people have heard different legend or heard different voices that weren't English or Spanish.
Okay.
And that what they can conclude to be Native American, possibly, for the Seminoles that were in the area at the time. It also has a former lightkeeper who is known to climb the stairs. Mm-hmm. But then there is in addition to the gift shop in the main building, there is I guess you would call it a feisty spirit that likes to play pranks and will slam doors in people's faces as they're getting ready to enter a room.
Oh, wow.
And also is known to either lock the door or hold the door closed so people can't get in or out of the room.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, that's what I would be doing in the afterlife.
So you've been ghost hunting. Have you ghost hunted most of these lighthouses yourself, or are you just taking the stories?
No, but I've talked to not only the people who work at the lighthouses and investigators who have investigated there.
Okay.
But I have been to both of them.
Let's move over to the west. That's where you're closer to the west, I believe. St. George Island.
Yep.
I've been on top of that lighthouse. We used to go there every year because just love the area. Mm-hmm. Boy, it's getting expensive now, though. Wow. So St. George Island, beautiful lighthouse there, was totally rebuilt after it collapsed into the sea. Moved. Yep. Neat. Mm-hmm. What's going on there? Is there anything there?
There's a lot of stories, especially from hurricane victims who have passed, that people, especially when it rains or winds get, and this is where you need to kind of rule out natural causes.
Okay.
And but the one legend is that people hear howling, and they almost associate it as people crying because people hid in the original lighthouse during a hurricane, and that's when it started crumbling and flooded and everything. And so, during that storm, and then others were hiding in the lighthouse, but then thought it was safe for them to leave, and they left by boat to never be seen again.
So the whole island at that stage of the game was underwater?
A majority of it was, yeah, from the storm, because the tides came in with the storm and put most of it underwater. I mean, you could still hide in the lighthouse because, of course, they're tall and that still stood out, but it was all flooded, and people claim to hear the cries of people perishing during the storm. And almost like some have reported that it would be clear outside, and when they go inside, that it almost sounds like there's whirling winds and almost like there's a hurricane outside is what they're hearing.
Do they I know they have full moon tours. They don't do haunted tours or ghost tours or anything there, do they?
Not that I've heard of yet, no.
Yeah, I've never been there for that, but now it's been since COVID that I've managed to get down there.
Right.
Okay. What's your opinion on that? Is that just the sounds of St. George Island echoing around down there, or could there really be spirits like that?
I'm kind of torn on that one because
Yeah.
I've never been to that one. And I know what it's when I've been in the Jupiter Lighthouse or even the St. Augustine one, when you're in you hear wind,
Mm-hmm.
like, and it almost sounds like it's howling because it's coming through the old doors or through, the cracks in the brick or something like that. So it could be easily explained by nature. But the one stories where it's clear outside, no rain, no wind, and they go inside and it just sounds like 100-mile-an-hour winds are going around the whole lighthouse. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, to me, that sounds like they either step back in time
Mm-hmm.
or something inside the lighthouse is reliving the storm.
That makes sense too.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I do know when I was in St. Augustine, I've been in several lighthouses, but this one was the first time I've been there with a crowd like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they told us to talk very, very low, even around the outside ring on
Mm-hmm.
the top. But yet
Right.
I could hear every word people were saying. It was echoing down, and well, that's several hundred feet.
Right. Yeah,
And
lighthouses for that reason are the worst place to do a paranormal investigation.
EVPs are ridiculous. Yeah, it can't be done. We could hear people whispering up there, but we know they were humans. We heard
Right.
their voices. So,
Yep.
okay. What else is there? I mean, those are the two lighthouses I'm familiar with. There's one right outside of Appalachia. No, God, I can't remember the name of this town now, but it's outside of St. George Island.
Okay.
And I can't remember. It's not like a regular, like the lighthouse like we like. It was more
Right.
like a tower you walked up real tight
Mm-hmm.
on the inside.
Yeah. There's several lighthouses. I mean, and those were real popular in the early days because they were actually hurricane resistant because the wind would go right through them. And some of the lighthouses that I featured in the lighthouse book I wrote also were on top of boats that were anchored offshore, and they just kind of swayed back and forth, almost like a beacon or,
Uh-huh.
but they're actual tall lighthouses, and they've secured them now to where they're not swaying. And the one story that always stands out is the Carey's Fort Lighthouse, just off of the Florida Keys.
Okay.
And that one, it's great for snorkeling. Beautiful coral reef. It's right there in the Florida Coral Barrier Reef area. And it was also in the pirate book too, because the one interesting story is there was because there was a lighthouse keeper at the top of those, there was like a 1-room apartment. So the lighthouse keepers would stay out there, and people would hear, who have visited recently have heard noises in that apartment. But the one story that sticks out the most is there was a maintenance worker who went out there with his little dinghy. He, puttered his way out there,
Right.
and he climbed, the inside of it. And when he looked down into the water, all of a sudden a skeleton dressed in ratty pirate clothing came with the current underneath him, freaked him out.
Yeah.
And when he climbed down a little bit to take a closer look to see if it was fake or if it was a prop or something, threw it there, and it disappeared. It wasn't like it sank into the water and, it vanished right before his eyes. And it's, the only person I've heard tell that story, but that story is like, if it's true, that's amazing.
Yes, it is.
What a thing to see.
Oh, we have got to get you back for the pirate. When the pirate book's out, I want to hear it because I really love the pirate stuff. Taking the pirate tour down in Panama City a few times.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. They just sent me back the final edit for that one. So I was working on that before we got on the show.
Oh, good. All right. So there's so much in Florida like that, but what good story do you have for the lighthouse? It just is amazing, which I did like the pirate one though.
Right. Something that's absolutely amazing. Trying to think, because they were all my favorite stories. So it's like trying to pick one is like trying to pick your favorite child.
Of course. I understand that.
Yeah. And it's, I would have to say, I mean, of course, St. Augustine always, even though I've never done any ghost hunting there or anything like that, that's always had a place in my heart just because I love St. Augustine, the culture, the history.
Town.
Right. And the other thing I discovered when I was doing the pirate book was that lighthouse also has, if you go a little bit down on the beach, there are more spirits that people don't research much. And those are the spirits of the 1715 Spanish fleet galleon that Mel Fisher discovered. and is in his museum. So between Sebastian and St. Augustine, when the ship sank, they came ashore, set up camp, and they were swimming out to sea to try to recover as much treasure as they could. And they used the St. Augustine Lighthouse as their beacon on where to gather.
Okay.
But then in turn, that targeted the pirates and said, hey, come here and get all this treasure that they're collecting.
So they lost a lot of it.
Right. But people on the beaches, and of course it could be natural, but people have reported hearing chatter. And then, of course, almost the screams and the yelling as if they're being raided. And then the sensation of being touched, like grabbed, almost like they're being pulled out of the way of something.
Okay.
And that happens on the beach just down the shore from the lighthouse.
All right.
Yeah.
The one place we haven't made it to, my wife and I are just dying to get there, and we will make it soon, is the Keys and what's the name of the last of the Key Islands?
Key West.
Key West, yes. Anything from that area?
Holy crap. I could write a book on that one.
All right.
That has, of course, there's I think 4 or 5 haunted lighthouses down there, but they're all your typical, sensation of being touched, hearing voices, all the standard, but nothing that stood out. But in Key West, you have everything from Robert the Doll, of course, is there. They have the Tony's Bar that has the hanging tree with a tomb underneath the hanging tree of the body is still there with her tombstone is down there. The cemetery just down the road, off of Duval Street has, they believe she's a voodoo priestess protecting the cemetery. So if you walk into the cemetery and disrespect any of the graves or make any nasty comments, she makes her appearance and tells you to get out. But, she's almost like she's watching it. You have Ernest Hemingway haunts his home that's down there. And there's rumors of people have seen ghost pirates walking down the streets.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, ghost pirates walking down the streets, and it's nonstop down there.
Why Florida? Is it just the history has been such a bloody mess, or is there something about the area?
I mean, if you think about Florida, Florida was the first area to be discovered in the New World on paper.
Yes.
So because you have St. Augustine, which is where all the history comes from, but it also suffered everything. You have the Seminole War, the Spanish-American War, there were battles fought, and people don't realize it, but battles were fought in the Civil War here in Florida. And because Florida, the Panhandle was actually Northern Union forts, but then the rest of it was Confederate forts, but the Union held their navy in the Gulf of Mexico. So Confederates couldn't get through. So you had that going on. Okay. And you have, it's also, there was I can't remember the name of the building, but there was a old Spanish building from, I want to say the 1500s that was actually taken apart brick by brick in Spain and transported over to Florida. So Florida also has the oldest building in the Western Hemisphere. And you name it, the history is just ongoing. And I also think it's haunted because you have the people down here are more open-minded to it.
Okay.
Where I've been to locations where people are completely closed off. Nope. Because like Vegas, if you want to talk about, there's ghosts everywhere and everybody talks about it, but you don't talk about it on the Strip because the casinos don't want people to know they're haunted.
Okay.
So it kind of restricts it a little bit. And down here, people are so open-minded. I think that continues to fuel and keep these legends alive, which in turn, people go and talk to these spirits, so they stick around.
I think that's because of the legends and all of the voodoo area and slaves and all this. I know New Orleans, we used to go there once or twice a year pre-COVID. We've been back once since then. The French Quarter is amazing, but they are so accepting of this. And Florida is also very accepting of this.
Yeah. And the other thing too, even though I don't have any scientific proof, which I wish I had, but it is, the theory is water contributes to paranormal activity. Florida is surrounded on all 3 sides.
Yeah. And it is moving. I always think of streams generating energy, but I guess the waves of the ocean would also generate even more.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And we have so much, in addition to the ghost towns, we have so much like the Florida Everglades. is the bottom third of the state, and you can't live there because it's all swampland. And down there you have UFO sightings. There's a UFO, I can't remember the name of the town, but it's I refer to it in my roadside attraction book as the UFO Mecca of Florida. And people will go to this beach to see UFOs, and people have captured photographs, and there's a whole bunch of stories on that. You have the skunk ape hiding in the Everglades, as well as people have reported other cryptids that they've spotted down, in the Everglades, because they can hide.
What kind of cryptids aside from the skunk ape, which is my understanding a shorter version of the Bigfoot?
Pretty much, yeah,
with a bathing problem. But
what it is it's because I went into detail in the roadside book, because the skunk ape headquarters is a popular roadside attraction here in Florida. And that's just at the entrance to the one of the entrances to the Everglades. And what it is the skunk ape builds its nest, or rumor has it, from what people have seen and caught, he'll build his nest underneath alligator dens. And so then he gets all of the decay from what the alligators don't eat, falls into his den. So he's living in the smell.
Quite a bit different from the Bigfoot and the other creatures, though, whether it's the West Virginia wild man or the Sasquatch. A lot different there, because I don't think they're known for that.
No. But I mean, other people have also reported, seeing chupacabras, of course. Unexplainable, even though I think it could be alligators, but who knows what's in our water. Unexplainable creatures coming out from the water that don't look anything like what we've, Florida wildlife is. And I had one person who told me that she's heard, and I haven't been able to confirm it yet, so I haven't included it in any of my books yet, but she had talked to people who have reported like fairies.
Haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah. So I'm still in contact with her, because we're trying to get the answers and talk to the source.
Yeah.
But so there's legends of that. So
that's
it's interesting
too. We're going to go back and talk St. Augustine, but if you'll hold on just a minute, I do have to let my sponsors have their say.
No problem.
All right, be right back with you. Hold on. Florida is an incredible place. I've been there multiple times. Like I said, we've been to St. Pete's Beach. We've been to St. George Island just took my heart. I love that place. And then there's, of course, St. Augustine, which I've been there for the first time. So much haunted stuff there. I filled a week of ghost stuff there. And it's intriguing to hear some of these stories. And we'll have more of these stories in just a minute, my friends, but I want you to check out these.
This is Margie Kay, and I'd like to say thank you to all of our KUNX show hosts, staff, listeners, and viewers for making us number one on Paranormal Talk Radio.
All right, boys and ghouls, like I've said, The X-Con is coming up quick. It's an amazing thing, and I will talk more about that after the interview. But joining up to the UNX network to get access to things like the X-Con and the blog and the newsletter and the magazine, it's all easy and quick. I will show you how at the end of the show. Most of you have seen this show before, so I know you know about it. But what's stopping you? As you saw, we've got the cryptids, we've got UFOs, government conspiracy, a lot of ghost stuff. Michelle Roos is just an incredible woman. I heard her lecture last year at the X-Con. I've seen her show. Amazing stuff going on in there. And the only thing we're missing is you, because your stories, your additions, your suggestions is really important. And I know what you're doing right now. You're suggesting I get back to Heather because you're really getting into Florida. So let's talk to Heather some more. Florida has had such bloody history. And I want to get back to St. Augustine because while I was there, I took 2 or 3 tours. Plus, I checked out the fort. I checked out the jail, the lighthouse. I mean, I really took up 4 days in there checking all of this stuff out. There's a pirate museum or 2. I think there's a couple of them down there.
Yep.
What kind of haunted stuff did you find aside from the lighthouse there?
Oh, geez. In my opinion, I would have to say St. Augustine next to Key West is the most haunted area in Florida.
Okay.
Because you have, especially Potter's Wax Museum is when you first walk into that location, it's almost like you walk into an apothecary store. Okay. And people have stepped foot in that, and things have flown off the, little bottles have flown off the shelf at them.
Now, where was this at again?
Potter's Wax Museum, and it's right across the square from where Ponce de Leon's statue is.
Okay, all right. There was a wax museum there, which was actually part of the tour, and they took us in through a back door. Okay. I don't know if it's the same one or not.
Okay, it might be. I think that's the only one there.
And yeah,
yep,
that's the one.
And that's one of them. And then Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Oh,
that one used to actually be a hotel before it became the museum. And there was a fire in there. So there were 2 women who perished in the fire that are believed to haunt the displays now. So they're intelligent because they kind of wander in and out. The founder of Ripley's Believe It or Not is also rumored to be there because he would stay in the hotel while scouting the area for his museum.
Okay.
And the area with the shrunken heads is known to have strange music. So it's almost like these shrunken heads brought the tribal music with them.
Really?
So even when the power's turned off for the day, these little heads just kind of have strange music playing around them. And then other people have just seen shadow figures throughout the building, and it's just really interesting. Then you have Flagler, his museum. He has an old teletype that people will hear it clicking, and it'll just start working on its own, like someone's operating it. It's made out of gold.
Was Flagler the one who started the college there?
Yeah, he was. He didn't start the college. The college was named after him.
Okay,
but
all right.
He was a big railroad tycoon in Florida. He brought the railroad to Florida.
Okay, I missed that museum then. I totally missed that one.
It's in his old home.
Okay.
So, and then the Ringling Brothers Circus was based in St. Augustine.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, so there's reports of the older brother is reported to haunt the building where they used to be at. So there's that one. And I'm trying to think. You have because during the pirate era, and I'm only talking about pirates just because I know we'll talk about it again in the future, but the pirate era was the worst for St. Augustine. They got hit one after another, and pirates come ashore at midnight and just kill everybody in sight. And that's why the Queen built the fort, which is now the most famous fort there. But I know Ranson. He was a famous pirate, and he actually was believed to be caught on film. And the photo of that was taken during the tour of the Castillo de San Marcos and shared on Ghost Adventures.
Okay.
So, and that photo you can find by searching it. And looks like someone dressed, it's a misty apparition of someone dressed in, like the white poofy shirts that they would wear. And first photo said they were on tour. Nobody was dressed like that on the tour.
Wow.
So, yeah. So you have that. Of course, Castillo San Marcos, you have the gunfire, the soldier walking the halls, protecting everybody. And then, of course, the soldier that has been spotted walking the top of the fort walls, protecting the fort. That one I hear is very, very haunted. And I've never encountered anything there, but I know people who have, and they say it's almost like you're seeing a real person.
Now, is that the big fort there in St. Augustine?
That's the bigger of the two forts, because St. Augustine has two forts.
I must have missed one.
Okay. Yeah. The other one is just across the street, and it was the original fort, and it was smaller, but it wasn't big enough to house everything. And that one, I had to joke because it does have your typical haunts, seeing apparitions on the beach, seeing shadow figures darting around the whole fort. But then it's also infested by ghost crabs, which are the white crabs that you see walking on the sandy beaches in Florida.
Okay, yeah.
So and I know that's just a stupid tidbit, but that's one thing that I found interesting. I'm like, here I am researching paranormal activity at a fort, and it's infested by ghost crabs.
And where was this fort again? Because
it's right across. You have a waterway.
Yes, yeah.
And it's across the way.
Oh, so it's over on the other side of that big bridge.
Right. Yeah.
I did not even know it was there. I was obviously less prepared than I thought. My wife got the trip for me for Christmas, so I was.
There's a lot there. The cemetery. Did you get to the cemetery?
We went outside of one that was supposed to be haunted,
okay.
And it was right next to one of those museums.
Yeah, but there's two main cemeteries there that are both really, really haunted. But your typical cemetery stuff, seeing spirits, hearing voices, and strange occurrences. But then there is one that's interesting. It's the oldest schoolhouse in America, is what it's called.
Okay.
And it's just this little schoolhouse. It's a one-room schoolhouse, but there's an upstairs area for where the teacher lived. And people have seen a woman standing in the window, and the stairs are so rickety that they've closed it off so nobody can go upstairs anymore because they're afraid someone would get hurt.
Yeah.
And legend is they believe that is the wife of the school teacher who would sit in the window and watch for him because he was always off in the town, I guess in St. Augustine's red light district.
Oh, well, okay.
Doing things he shouldn't do. And she was always watching out for him there. But then other people have, because also underneath the staircase is it almost reminds me of a Harry Potter closet, underneath the stairs where Harry Potter lived. And the school teacher, if students were bad in his mind or got a bad grade on something, he would lock them in there for the day. So people have heard whimpering and crying coming from underneath the stairs.
Wow.
But then others have also heard what would sound like the snapping of a ruler. Like how smack the back of the hands with the ruler or smack the desk with the ruler. People have heard that sound out of nowhere when no one had a ruler. So that's an interesting one.
The town's just insanely haunted, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. And I for that town, I think it's a combination of you have the rivers going through the town, the beach right there, and then you also have the underwater, even though it's not what people think it is, you have the underwater currents that feed the Fountain of Youth.
Okay, I was outside that place, but I did not go into it.
Right. Yeah, it's not much anymore because a lot of it has dried up. And if that's what Ponce de Leon was looking for, he would have been disappointed.
I'm told there was a lot of sulfur in it.
Yes, yeah, and it's beautiful. They've turned it into a beautiful garden and everything like that. And about 50 yards away from where the actual fountain is, people have reported seeing what they believe is the spirit of Ponce de Leon, because that's as close as he ever got. He never found it.
Really? He was that close?
50 yards away.
Yeah, like you said, he didn't want it anyway. Once he found it,
yeah.
He would have been
disappointed.
So we've talked St. Augustine, what about the jail there? I was in there, did a nighttime tour. And
There's, of course, reports, I know keys clinking. And then other than that, from what I've heard at that location, just your standard but some people have seen not so much a full-bodied apparition, but almost like a shadow figure.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Appear continues to swing back and forth.
Okay. Now, and they've got the gallows outside, which I know has been rebuilt multiple times.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Nothing survives long in that area as it comes to wood. But any ghosts around that? Is there? Because there was a lot of hangings there at one time, I believe.
Right. None that I've actually heard of, but again, you have with those, like the other one is you do have them swinging on their own. Mm-hmm. And I would say normally that's the wind, but people will say that one would be swinging, but the rest won't be, or all of them would be swinging, but one.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, pick and choose which stories you want to believe and which ones you want to rule out from natural causes.
When are you going to do a book on St. Augustine, or is there too many of them?
I think there's too many of them, but because right now I'm with the History Press, which is a branch of Arcadia Publishing.
Okay.
And so the books I've been doing, I gave them a list of like 30 books that I could write. And some of them, they said, nope, we already have this one. We have this one. We have this one.
Gotcha.
And then they're kind of picking it, but I'm still going to write them. And I'm either going to find a different publisher or I'm just going to self-publish them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're onto something with that. I self-publish mine too, so it's doesn't make a lot, but I can put whatever I want in it.
Right. I've been hesitant about it, and I do have one that I self-published, which is actually a network marketing book. I had this dream one night, and I wrote a book called 13 Things Ghost Hunting Taught Me About Network Marketing.
Really?
Yeah.
Now,
and I self-published that one, but it's, I think, sold 2 copies.
Well, I think I need one. I'd like to see your ideas on that as well. We've talked St. Augustine, Key West, which are both legendary. What other cities should we hit while we're here?
Oh, geez. If you're in Florida, definitely Orlando. Because
I was going to ask.
Yep. The Greenwood Cemetery is extremely haunted left and right. You name it, you're coming across apparitions, being touched, being, just strange things occur. I mean, even on a hot 95-degree day, people have had to put jackets on in certain areas of the cemetery.
Wow.
Because they just get really cold. And then, of course, I mean, Disney World, which is another book coming soon.
No kidding. Now that
I worked there. I worked there for many years. So I have stories from guests, personal experiences, and stories from other cast members.
Is Walt in there somewhere?
No. Because Walt never visited Disney World.
Okay.
People do say, I mean, I do have information that people have seen him in what would have been Walt's apartment overlooking Main Street. But I think that's just a self-manifestation of people wanting him to be there.
All right.
But people have seen Roy, his brother.
All right.
So
maybe that's it.
Yeah, but Pirates of the Caribbean is not only haunted by George, who was one of the contractors, supposedly a contractor, but when I dove into records, there was no contractor that died on site named George. So it's interesting. But when I used to work there, I was in recreation. And I was over at Fort Wilderness for a time, and we would get calls that there was a little boy running around River Country, which was shut down. So we would have to get security, head over there, unlock the gate, go into River Country and look for this little boy. No little boy. No little boy to be found anywhere.
Right.
And then Discovery Island was just off of Fort Wilderness. You would take a boat over there, and it was before Animal Kingdom was built. And they would have animals. You could, birds and different animals. You can learn about the different animals and conservation there. And they shut that down and they removed all the animals. But when I was on lake patrol driving my boat around the island, I would hear strange noises that sounded like animals were still flourishing there, and not your typical, like a bird flew to the island or an alligator. It was almost, because I used to visit that a lot. And it was those same sounds that you heard when you were there. So
elephants or something totally different from Florida.
Right. Yeah. It was just strange sounds were had. The island really wasn't big enough for elephants, but they had other larger animals there. Okay. And it was just really weird that we would hear that. But you have that. Some of the hotels have stories. including, apparitions. I know the tunnels of the Magic Kingdom have really, strange stories, but those are creepy to begin with.
I did not even know there were tunnels there.
Oh yeah, oops.
It makes sense.
I no longer work there, so
yeah, you're safe.
No, but people know about the tunnels, and it's to make it to where you can go from one place to another without having to go through all the crowds.
Right. I understand why. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of other reasons, but those are creepy to begin with. So you have that. Of course, the Hollywood Tower of Terror has a little boy that's seen running at night after they've closed in the cast member only area. Haunted Mansion, there actually was, I saw, and I haven't been able to disprove it yet, but there's a photo that someone took going forward, and they have a face of a little boy peeking around the dune buggy looking back at them. And they knew for a fact that nobody got in the car in front of them.
Okay.
So yeah. So, and I haven't been able to I've analyzed that photo up and down, looking for pixelization.
Sure.
And I can't find anything to disprove that one.
Wow. That's the stories, the legends, and I think it's even been said, yes, it's true, is the one in California. People bring their dead family's ashes there to sprinkle around. Is that happen in Florida also?
Yeah, it's at the Haunted Mansion in that little cemetery area. And they're constantly having to stop people. They have security there monitoring it when they can. Of course, cameras are pointed there. And if you're caught doing it, you get a ban for life. As well as then they have to take a whole cleanup crew in there and make sure they get everything out. But then you have those that manage to do it with nobody knowing.
Wow. So, well, that would have to bring some spirits of some sort. You got the ones who wanted to be left there, and they're
right
there.
Right. Yeah. It's like, and to me, it's like, even though I've kind of am Disneyed out from working there so long, it's, think about, even if your ashes weren't spread there, where would you want to spend your afterlife? Somewhere you had fun at.
Well, yeah.
And if you visited Disney a lot, why not?
I've come across a lot of haunted schools all over the country. I've investigated because that's where they were happy. When they were children, you had no responsibilities. You had you just went out and played.
Right. Yeah.
And I think they'd come back to where they were happy like that. And Disney would be exactly the same.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
You've got some books coming out, and it's Haunted Florida Ghost Towns, which we've talked a little bit, and the Florida Pirates, which we've talked a little bit. And you've got another one coming out or two, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the Ghost Town book just recently came out.
Oh,
so that one came out in March. In August 5th is going to be Haunted Roadside Attractions.
Let's includes talk about that just briefly.
That was a fun one to write.
I've stopped at a few of those roadside attractions. I love them. I was raised in Missouri on the old Route 66. So we had those things all over, from big teepees to caves to whatever. Anything that would make a few bucks, they do it. What do you got down there?
Oh, Florida, you have everything from the alligator farms. Of course, that's the book where I included the Ripley's Believe It or Not in there. There is, I did include a couple lighthouses because a couple lighthouses are a must visit for people who are on road trips. The Monticello Museum, which is the Monticello Fort down in Key West, where you can go see Robert the Doll. That also talks about the history of Robert the Doll. So you have that. There are, of course, the giant oranges that you see around the state here and there. And one place that I hold dear to my heart, and I think I've written about it in 3 or 4 of my Florida books, is Yeehaw Junction.
Never heard of it.
It is smack dab in the center of the state. It's you get to it by it's Route 60 at the Florida Turnpike.
Okay.
So it's the rest stop for people traveling from Orlando to West Palm on the Florida Turnpike. It is this cute little old town. Granted, it is completely falling apart. It had this watering hole that people used to ride their horses to back in the day before there were even cars. And they would, it was a brothel upstairs and a bar downstairs, but it was also a family restaurant. So people coming through town by horse and buggy would go there for dinner. There's a cemetery just down the road that's really haunted, but the hotel is because it was the bar and then they had a motel next to it.
Mhm.
It's been abandoned for years. Back, I want to say 6-7 years ago, a semi truck ran into the bar when it was
Wow.
closed. But then they kind of rebuilt it, fixed it up a little bit. And then a couple weeks later, after they got it fixed up, another semi truck ran right into the front of the bar. So they've now let it go to complete disrepair. And I was lucky enough they had a fence up, but I got photos before the whole front of the building fell off.
Wow.
Because the last time we drove by, the whole front of the building was gone.
Mhm.
And you can now see in. But inside there's reports that when you look in a mirror up in the brothel room, that you would see a disfigured female standing behind you in what a lady of the night would wear.
Okay.
But then when they turn around, there's nobody there. In the bar, just you would hear glasses clinking and nobody was in the bar except for you.
Mhm.
So just, it was like bar life still continued.
Wow.
And yeah, but it's such a cute little town. Now they have 1, 2, 4 gas stations there, but it still has that old town feel. And it's
Okay.
just really, really that place. I would, if it wasn't so out in the middle of nowhere, I would live there. It's beautiful, open fields,
Mhm.
you name it. It's just that has, and the feeling you get just driving through that town, you can feel the energy. There's more there than meets the eye.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to check that out sometime
Yeah.
then. Definitely. All right. Well, I hate to stop this one because Florida just intrigues me. Florida and West Virginia are the two that are just crazy. But I do have to move along. So Dr. Heather Leigh Landon,
Mhm.
and you are the author of Haunted Southern Nevada, Ghost Towns, and all the other books we've talked about. And thank you for coming on. And I hope I can get you to come back when it's time to talk about pirates.
Oh, yes, definitely. Let me know when. That book comes out in September. So let me know when.
Oh, definitely. And
Yep.
you just had one about Haunted Florida Ghost Towns.
Yes,
right?
that came
Which
out
we
in
talked
March.
about.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep.
We'll talk about ghost towns one day then.
No problem.
All right. Heather, thanks for coming on.
Yep. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
You too. Take care. Florida is incredible and much more haunted than I knew. I mean, I knew about St. Augustine, of course, and like any other place, this place, that place is haunted over here, over there. But man, some of these towns are just all ghosts, I guess. And on that, friends, I want to remind you about joining the UNX Network. Go to unxnetwork.com unxnetwork.com. And first page, drop down a little bit, you fill in some paperwork, you're a member, you get the blog free, you get the newsletter, you get the magazine. And let me show you some of the magazines. It's monthly, it's an electric version, you can get a print version if you decide to. But there it is, the Haunted Battleship North Carolina is one I wrote. That was a little over a year ago. There's recently I wrote one on the vampires of New Orleans, haunted places, legends, conspiracies. In fact, the most recent one has a big conspiracy thing I wrote up. And we get other writers. I'm only on maybe 6 or 8 times a year. The rest of the time, it's other people who are just as or far better writers than I am. And it's UFOs, ghosts, vampires, conspiracies, cryptids, Bigfoot, skunk monster, you name it. It's all right there. And of course, the UXCon, which happens in October 11th to the 13th, Springfield, Missouri. The story I want to tell you, and I've told it before, I'm sure, was, guys, we were in that same hotel. We had it there last year. I was sitting at my table watching the speakers. I had a table for selling my books, and there it was. Shadow people kept crossing the room in front of me, and other people saw it. We're going to be doing stuff about that this time. I'm going to be showing you how to use dowsing rods, and I think Michelle is going to be there also talking about ghost hunting and equipment. And then we're going to try and make some contact. There's so much going on here. You need to be a member. And it's so simple. unxnetwork.com and fill in the blanks. Really, really simple. And it's something you need to consider because of all the neat stuff. And it is past time for me to step out, but I really love talking about Florida with Heather. It was incredible, wasn't it? And makes me want to go back. Of course, I always want to go back to St. George Island. So anyway, thanks for coming in. Y'all stay warm. Well, I keep saying that. Here it is summertime. Stay cool and stay spooked, even more so. All right. Take care.